Dad Games podcast. I'm Shan.
I'm Eric.
I'm Tucker.
And I'm Emerlie.
We're finally doing it. This is the Last of Us. The Last of Us Part 2. The denouement, that's the douchiest way of saying it's the ending, the emotional catharsis of the last part of this game.
It is the last part of the last part of the last part of us part 2, last part.
Yeah.
Remake.
We thought it might go to 20
Remake.
episodes, but we didn't get there. I don't know how many we're at, like 12, 13.
I think this is 11 or 12. I'm making the thumbnails, and so that's the only reason I keep track. Is I think this is episode 11. Nope, 12.
I do want to point out that
we kept it under 20. Solid.
Yeah. The appropriate term is denouement because it's not an epilogue. That's actually a completely different term. Not all stories have an epilogue. That would be like Harry Potter when they like flash forward to Albus Severus, whatever stupid head child, right? Like, and that's like a completely different self-contained story that after they've already finished the story, that's an epilogue. A denouement is something that all stories have. It is what happens after the climax, and it is the emotional catharsis to the story that ends the whole thing.
Now, you'd think that by now I would know better than to argue against Shan, but I will say that while looking up the chapter titles so that I could organize my notes, that this part is categorized as Epilogue, the farm. That's what I'm saying.
According to the game or according to like IGN, some stupid
you know what? Okay, well, just shut up, Shan. I don't know.
Shan,
Stop
we
it.
get it. You're a pretentious prick. Okay, you don't need to prove it anymore.
Who are you?
Damn it, Shan! I just wanted to win one argument. Like,
shove it up your butt.
Way up there.
All right, way up there. So where we last left off, Ellie just had this moment after getting in a fight with Abby where she got into fisticuffs with her, and then she had a flashback to the final penultimate encounter with Joel, where she remembered that maybe it was actually her fault that she has all these raw emotions, and she was taking it out on Abby incorrectly. And once she had this flash of Joel playing his guitar on his porch, she was able to stop and say, you know what, take him, referring to Lev, and get out of here. And she just like buckles and cries there in the water. And then we jump back to the farm, and there's an insert, a close-up of her fingers, and she's rubbing her fingers together. Now, to me, this intimates that in her head, she's already thinking of playing the guitar. I don't think she's thinking of Dina. She's already thinking, I wonder if I can still play the guitar. I'm still thinking about Joel.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That's kind of the same thing I came. You do see the 2 missing fingers that Abby bit off. Mm-hmm. And so I have a lot of thoughts on the guitar playing scene of this, so I can save those for when we get there.
Yeah, I also think the rubbing the fingers and the camera kind of zooming in on that moment is just a quick reminder to the audience of what exactly happened, because in the fight, like when she's fighting Abby, there's kind of a lot going on. It's a frantic moment. And I mean, it's framed pretty well so you can see that Abby bites her fingers and you can kind of see them come off. But like, if for some reason the audience missed that moment, now as you're walking back there, the camera zooms in, it's like, nope, her pinky and her ring finger are gone. Like, so I think that there's obviously story reasons for that, but there's game reasons for it to make sure that the audience is like really understands that she lost those fingers in that fight.
The first time I played this game, I definitely didn't pay attention to that because it was so chaotic when they were fighting each other, and you just have all these mixed emotions. Who do I want to win? You actually think one of them.
It's hard to see the
to
screen
die.
through the tears,
And
yeah.
Exactly. I was crying too much. I couldn't see the screen. I was like, oh my gosh, they're splashing water all over the place. It has nothing to do with the tears in my eyes. So that was part of it. But I also think that all along the way, this game is flashing backwards, it's forwards, you're getting lost just like watching Lost. So it having those visual cues also helps you to place where it is in the timeline. You know, with Ellie, you can see the progress of her tattoos along the way. You can see some changes in how she dresses herself and things like that. So I think that also helps us just to realize that this is immediately after, with just that little visual cue.
There's no way anybody here also gets to this part of the story and doesn't think of Lord of the Rings, right? That's not just me.
Yeah, instantly.
Every time.
What, you mean how it has like 6 endings? You keep thinking the game ends and then it just doesn't?
Where Smeagol bites off. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's twofold, right? The Smeagol biting off the fingers and the game ending 5 times. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, really, it's because Abby goes full Smeagol on Ellie and bites off her fingers. There's only so many movies that
Ellie returns home to find that everyone has been enslaved.
Yeah.
Yep, there's some certain parallels there. Also, okay, so when we get back to the farm, I didn't do a direct comparison. To me, it felt notably desaturated, the farm's palette, because at least like internally, I remember the first time I'm there, there's a lot of like warmth to the hay as it's blowing around in the wind, and this time I'm there, it's just a lot more neutral, and I felt emptier. The warmth was already gone before I entered the house. Like there was some foreshadowing that I could feel inside of me.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed that feeling of emptiness and that lack of color well before you get to the house, because when you're there the first time, when everything is happy and you're hanging out with Dina and JJ, and which, by the way, apologies for the last episode of just completely forgetting the baby's name. His name is JJ. I'm an idiot.
It's Potato. It'll always be Potato.
I just called him Potato because that's what Ellie called him. But anyways, when you're in that part of the game, everything's happy and stuff, and it's a very like bright red sunset. So it's lots of really warm colors. But then when you come back here, I think the sky, if I remember correctly, is a little more overcast. It's less colorful, and so everything feels a little more like the color has been sucked out of it, which, I mean, is obviously an intentional choice to put you in a headspace and to make you feel that emptiness well before you get to the empty house.
Yeah, super cool way of using weather and just the external surroundings that are just naturally occurring to get you to this feeling of, oh, something's different at the farm. It's not this warm, happy place anymore.
Yeah, well, Dina says, I'm not going to wait for you if you leave. Like, we're not just going to sit and wait for you. And so you kind of know that once the scene starts, you're like, Dina's probably not here.
Yeah. And it's capturing her internal state perfectly.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. But then, you walk into the house and the house is just empty. I love how the door frame is able to frame your perspective so that the camera is able to like go in right over her shoulder, so that as she sweeps open the door, you capture the exact moment that she is also devastated.
What I think's interesting.
Framing.
So I think it's important to note that Dina left Ellie's music behind, her music collection. This was something that they shared. They danced to it earlier on. Music, I think, has been a big part of their relationship. So I didn't notice that the first time I played it, but this time playing through, to me, it feels a very intentional choice by Dina's character of, here's all your stuff, and it's actually a clean cut. It's not I'm going to take you back. Feels very permanent.
Yeah, it makes it extra heartbreaking because it gives you little clues to like, Dina is moving on. She didn't just physically leave, she's emotionally leaving too. And like, that's sucks for Ellie. But I mean, she chose that. So
yeah, here's a count, go through this in your head, right? The house is empty. She gets there and she goes up to the guitar. You don't see the music. She just plays the guitar and then she leaves. In your head, you're like, well, maybe in the third game she's going to see Dina and maybe they'll get back together. With that counterfactual, without the music laying there, the vinyls, you don't get that nail in the coffin that makes you think, what if, right? But that is like a slap in the face, like, I put you behind me. There's no emotional connection left. I'm done with you.
Yeah. Well, and the first time I played the game, I definitely was like, I want a third game. I want Ellie to go after Dina. And then playing it at this time slowly and taking notes and really trying to soak things in, it just kind of is like, I don't think that's what's going to happen. Maybe Ellie will go look for her, but I don't, like, if she finds her, I don't know what Dina would do. Like,
well, and music is how they got together. Remember, that music that they play, or that Ellie played when they,
well, in the dance,
when she was
and the
serenading.
dance.
Oh yeah,
Like,
the
music
dancing
is a
scene.
core part of their relationship.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think that is just a motif that also just cements that there's nothing left. It's just great continuity with their characterization of their relationship. So what do you think is the primary reason Dina left? We already know that she, like, said, you know, you leave to go after Abby, that's it, I'm done. And I think clearly JJ is now in the equation. Personally, I think probably JJ, for his safety, I can't put him in harm's way. That's probably the biggest reason. But so many things are more complicated. She was all on board before, and now what is everything that has changed that I have to be gone now?
I mean,
Well,
for
they've
me,
lost
I think
so many people. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I would say Dina. They finally had the life they talked about. They were literally living the dream, and Ellie threw that away for Abby. You know, we talked about this last episode when Dina says she can't be more important than us, and Ellie actively chooses them. I mean, that's a whole level of rejection that Dina's feeling, you know. And then on top of that, you have a child in the equation. You saw what this revenge cycle can do to people and how many people got lost. You know, your good friend Jesse, Jesse just got shot. You know,
big potato.
Bit ago. Yeah, big potato.
Yeah. Big potato.
So, because I thought it was interesting because people around them are getting hurt from what they did, but Dina is also getting hurt. So it could be for herself. It could be, I don't want to get JJ hurt. So that's probably priority number one. And then what I had never considered before is she's leaving. Well, she had to leave also for Ellie because she loved her. It was, I have to put this line in the sand that said, I'm leaving if you go. And it's for your own good as well, because you have to know the stakes of what you're doing.
Yeah, healthy relationships have boundaries.
Yeah.
That was Dina's boundary.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if Dina's like, if you leave, we're not going to wait for you, and then Ellie comes back and she's waiting for her, then it's like, that's not how that should work, you know? Like, you have to be willing to put us first, basically, is what Dina's saying, and then Ellie didn't, and so Dina's like, okay, well, I can't just hang around for you then.
Yeah. All right. So, body language, you know, she goes into her room and everything's still there, and she grabs the vinyls, there's a few there, and she kind of just, in my head, how I perceived it, it looks like she just kind of callously tossed them. Is that how everybody else perceived it? It seemed like she wasn't, like, she had already dismissed Dina in her head, like she didn't even, like, maybe she already knew Dina would have left and didn't care that that was over because she had already processed it before she got back.
I didn't take it that way. I took her as more of like, I really messed up, I'm mad at myself type of toss away. Like, this is what I brought to our relationship, and I royally boinked it. And I don't know, that's something that I would do. I'd be more mad at myself.
First of all, can we all start using the phrase royally boinked it?
Yeah.
That is the technical
royally
term.
boinked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the PG version.
Yes.
No, but I think that I like the idea of Ellie being mad at herself about that, but I also think that she's just, when she's so used to kind of putting on a tough person persona, that even when she's not when she's by herself, she's like, I can't let myself feel these feelings. Just throws it aside and then keeps going on with what she's doing.
But like,
she's very good at turning
quickly,
off her emotions.
Yeah.
But again, like how quickly she just kind of like glanced at the vinyl and then tossed it aside. It just again reiterated to me that it's like she had a one-track mind. It wasn't to get there and hope Dina was there. It was I really want to see if I can still play that guitar. I want to see if I still have this deeply emotional connection to Joel. And so I'm going to think about this for a second, but I'm still just here for Joel because I can't stop thinking about this.
The whole game has been about the relationship between Ellie and Joel, and Ellie's relationship to other people, but the primary relationship is between Ellie and Joel. And so that's for that to be her primary focus in the final moments of the game here, I think is very intentional. So
All right, so she pulls out the guitar and she starts playing it, and you already know what it's going to sound like, and yet how devastating is every failed guitar string? I'm just getting emotional just thinking about it. Like, how is every failed plucked guitar string just so emotionally devastating, like a dagger through the heart?
Yeah,
like it feels like every time she fails at a string, it's like that's you failing Joel. It's so heavy.
Yeah. Just to clarify and paint the picture for the listener, this is on Ellie's hand that doesn't have her pinky and ring finger, is the one that she's on the neck of the guitar. So she can't hit certain chords because she doesn't have those fingers. She's trying to play Guitar Hero on hard when she only can do easy.
got to slide that pinky down.
Already
it's really
like,
hard. Yeah.
The least dexterous finger.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you, Shan. Like this is I'm gonna dare to say this is my favorite part of the game because it's the part of the game that has stuck with me the most. Of just there's so much symbolism in this for me, of just the damage that hate and revenge causes to relationships, and a lot of the times it's irreparable. We see irreparable meaning things can't ever be good again, but things are never going to be the same. And I think this is the perfect symbolism for it. Things are not the same between Ellie and Joel, obviously, and things aren't going to be the same between Ellie and Dina because of these hate-driven choices that Ellie has made.
Well, something that I find particularly heartbreaking about this moment is Ellie starts to play If I Were to Lose You, which is the same song that Joel, we've seen Joel play a couple of times, obviously has themes throughout the game because Joel plays it, If I Were to Lose You, and then he loses Ellie by having her find out the truth. And then Ellie plays If I Were to Lose You right after losing Joel, very literally after he dies. And then she's playing If I Were to Lose You Now. And as you're strumming and as you're trying to hit the chords, I agree with Shan, every single note that she misses is just a dagger. And it made me misty-eyed just to watch Ellie try to connect herself with Joel and not be able to anymore. And so she's lost Joel all over again. She's playing If I Were to Lose You, and she's lost that connection that she had to Joel permanently. She can never play the guitar the same way again. She physically can't because of choices that she made and paths that she took. And it's such a good way to very literally represent the damage inside of her.
I think also just a little bit beyond that, it's not only can she not play the guitar and connect with him that way, she may never hear those songs again. I don't know if in this universe these are supposed to be made up songs or if they are just covers.
That's a real song.
They're real songs.
I didn't know that it was.
Well, I know it's a real song. I'm saying like within the video game world. I don't know if that's supposed to be a real song or made up. Whatever.
It is
but
supposed
either
to be
way, it's, she might not be able to hear that song ever again unless she can find a recording of it at some point, and maybe we can see that in a future game, but she will never have that connection with him likely ever again. And that's just sad because I'm not very good at music and all that stuff, but even just listening to music, even just singing along can bring so much emotion and can be so cathartic, and she won't have that, and that's just That is super depressing for me.
Well, what did we talk about it like towards the beginning? If I Were to Lose You is a song by Pearl Jam. We talked about how they just survived the apocalypse and they kept writing songs, and so they can go see him live. Yeah, they're on tour.
They're going from QZ to QZ to Jackson.
Yeah.
And Ellie and Joel went over to their house like Bill Murray in Zombieland.
Oh, but of
and
course,
accidentally shot them.
Yeah.
Also, I just had this hilarious thought of like Neil Druckmann sitting down, like trying to break down this scene and how to direct it. And he's just like pretending to bite off fingers like, okay, now play the guitar with these fingers. And how does it sound? Now bite off this finger. And what does it sound like? And once he figures out the most
trying to decide which
combination of fingers, is like, okay, now we have to go back to that fight scene with Ellie and Abby, and those are the fingers you have to bite
Some
off.
poor dev had to animate every single possible variation.
Which fingers are the most important to play If I Were to Lose You by Pearl Jam, and whichever two fingers are the most important, those are the ones Ellie needs to lose. Like,
I'm sure like, Eddie Vedder had some input here, and just called them up. And
imagine if it had been like two non-sequential fingers and like thumb, having like Ellie like trying to script like choreograph Abby biting those fingers off in some organic way would have been impossible.
She went to go grab Abby on the nose with her pinky and her thumb, and then Abby just
oh, I love fingers. I'm going in a second time.
I'm always so fascinated with like games, movies, TV shows, all that. Like that's music is such a strong way for me to connect to the media. And often, like, I'm not really much of a music person. I love musicals though, but I don't just like listen to music casually. But after music is in a TV show that I love or a game, like I connect with it so strongly, and I will listen to those songs again. And it just brings back so much emotion of what I felt in that moment. Like the song Rivers and Roads that is played at the very end of Chuck. I cannot listen to that song without just crying my eyes out, because it brings me back to that moment. And so something that really fascinates me with movies and shows and things is, how do you choose those songs? Like there's some soundtracks that are such basic, the same song cycled over and over again, especially back in, what was it, like 2012, we got all of the End of the World stuff, and it was that Imagine Dragons song, Radioactive. Like some people or some shows just use the exact same songs over and over again, and something that I just absolutely love is when these shows can choose songs that really make you connect with them and are so unique. And I just think that's a fascinating job too, that people are able to do that. And all the songs in this game just nailed it. I can listen to the soundtrack over and over again, and never cared for Linda Ronstadt, never heard Long Time, and that song too just makes me cry my eyes out. So I just love all the songs that they have in here.
Not me. Rant. I hate video game soundtracks. Yeah, I never ever listen to video game soundtracks,
especially the indie soundtracks.
More than anything,
it makes them want to rage
pop
quit
in my
life.
Headphones. Yeah, I never pop in my headphones and listen to them while I work. Never ever.
Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin did a podcast about the show with the Bill and Frank episode and choosing Long Time. And basically, Craig Mazin just has like a music aficionado that he has on speed dial, and it's.
Wow.
How do we pick?
Luke?
He's got a guy.
Yeah, it's Luke, but it's really just like this person just has like all music memorized, and it's, hey, I need music that captures these sentiments and from this time period, and it can't be too on the nose, like something that people know, but it has to be somewhat familiar. And the person just like clicks in and it's like, I know exactly what song you're talking about, and you just need a music savant that just knows what you're talking about. Although probably now you could create like an AI that just like kind of is trained to surface music like that. Although,
Nah,
I
it's more
don't
fun to
know.
have a guy.
It's
I got a
It's more
guy.
expensive.
fun
I'll
to have
talk
a
to
guy.
my music
I've got a
guy.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it costs hundreds of thousands a year to keep on retainer.
Totally worth it.
Yeah.
But I love when the music is not too much on the nose. Like it's, like I said, radioactive is too obvious and it was used too much.
Yeah, that was.
But then you get these random songs like Long, Long Time or Stranger Things. They brought back Running Up
Well,
That Hill, and you're like, this is so epic, and it's not on the nose. It's so
well, the
cool.
reason it's so important and necessary is because it's a monocultural moment where n- nobody is thinking about it, and it suddenly becomes number one for like 3 months straight, and everybody in the world is listening to it, and everybody's connected for a moment because that's so rare now. I think that's just like what we still get that with music sometimes, and so yeah, long time did that, and then Running Up the Hill, like I love it when these like nostalgic time like these music pieces just get resurfaced and just blow up. All right, so as she strums and fails, she has a flashback to the moment that they foreshadowed when she was fighting with Abby, and so since she was fought Abby, this is the moment she's been playing over and over again in her head. She then runs back to the farm to play the guitar. To maybe it's just like a stateful thing. She's like she wants to play the guitar to just kind of like I want to remember this as best as I can, and playing music gets me in that stateful mind to like remember every detail of that last encounter that I had with Joel, the last good encounter that I had with him. That's probably sort of what's going through her head, but yeah, so she gets there, plays the guitar, and then she flashes back again and recaptures that moment in her head.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, like, this is, I think, the last interaction Ellie has with Joel
Before the death.
before his death, and if it were me, I would replay that all the time in my head, all the time, because that's the last good memory you have.
Throughout the game, she can only have flashbacks of the moment that he hits the ground and he's bloodied. Well, not that he hits the ground. She only has flashbacks of his bloodied face, and that's the only thing she can remember, and it's devastating to her. And then that fight is the first time it breaks through, and she remembers this, and she wants this to be the thing she remembers.
Yeah, this is what pulled her out of the dark place. This is what, yeah,
exactly.
Anyway.
And she wants to like recontextualize her relationship as she remembered it, and kind of move on. And so she's trying to remember like what was it, and was it my fault, and can I move on? So Ellie had just been at the dance with Dina. They had kissed, and Seth had accosted them, and what's her name? Not Marlene, the other person.
Maria
had broken them up. Joel, having just found out that Ellie was gay, had still wanted to protect her with her life, ran out there to stop Seth and said, get away from her. And yeah, Maria said, get away, you guys break it up and get out of here. And this made Ellie furious, because she didn't want Joel interacting with her or getting involved in her life. And Joel says he had no right, and she says, and you do, and he's a broken puppy, and he says, right. And he takes off, and then
Poor
she
Joel.
has this moment of amazing facial acting where it looks like for a second she's regretting she's absorbing what just happened. She's like, wait, did Joel just accept me, and did he just protect me in spite of just learning about me, and do I regret what I just did? And so maybe an hour later, after playing this through in her head and maybe regretting it, she decides to go to Joel's house and talk to him and decide if she wants a different relationship with Joel after years of grief and struggle, after the Salt Lake encounter of running out there to find out that Joel had been lying to her. Do you think did I get this right? I put a lot of like conjecture, or at least reading between the lines. I still believe this is reading it correctly.
Yeah, I think the setup that all tracks for me. And you have to kind of do a little bit of guesswork about where Ellie's head might be, but I think that as far as setting up this next scene, which is probably my favorite scene in the game, just because it recontextualizes everything that comes before it. And so you almost don't really fully understand the story until you play it again, knowing this scene. And so I think, and Shan's got a script here. We're going to break it down piece by piece. I'm super excited to talk about it because I love this conversation that Joel and Ellie have, because there's so much meaning behind every word that they say to each other. And it's just wonderful, beautiful writing. I love it.
When she gets there, Joel is playing guitar, and he's just it's a slow, beautiful guitar piece. And this is right after he had been, attacked by Ellie. In my head, I think, okay, he needs to calm down. He already knew that he had this strained relationship with Ellie, but in my head, the guitar now symbolizes the most poignant, deepest parts of his connection to Ellie. And so when he goes back to his place and plays guitar, that's him remembering the best parts of his relationship with Ellie. And so it's his way of calming down and remembering that. I think that's what this is when she stumbles across him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be reading.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think that he's trying to center himself a little bit.
Yeah. But then he sees her, and I love, camera angles down low, and I don't know, for some reason, just like the directing, it's all very subtle, but it just, I wish I understood filmmaking better to be able to articulate what I feel like they're doing correctly sometimes.
It really grounds the scene, just that low angle. Again, I wish I could also understand that, but it just feels very real and raw in those moments.
Like, I know a lot of time, like low angles, high angles, that's a lot like to do with power dynamics. But like in this context, it feels like it makes him vulnerable. I think that has to do with it. It's catching him off guard, and the camera angle is making us a participant in that. And
I would agree with that.
so like it's a vantage point that like catches him off guard, and just like Ellie is catching him off guard, and he's so she stumbles across him. He's like, oh, hey. And like I love his just like his grumbly gravitas. It's all gravelly, and it's just like, it always just feels like he's just weak now, right? Like when he's around her, that he has no defenses left. There's no strength, no baritone. Like he's just forever vulnerable because he doesn't want to be forceful against her anymore.
Well, I think it's one of the few times where Joel doesn't have control over the outcome. Mm-hmm. He is completely beholden to Ellie and what she wants to do. He has an idea. He
wants her to plow over her to get. He wants her to get what she wants to repair the relationship. He wants to be compliant. Mm-hmm.
And so he is just waiting for her to lead. Yeah, maybe not control, but he's not the one leading the relationship. She is leading it. She is completely in the driver's seat of how this is going to turn out. He's made his intentions known, throughout the first game, and as they've been in Jackson, and how he's standing up for her, coming to her aid, playing that father figure. But he's been completely rejected by Ellie after she finds out. And so I think when she shows up, that's a big shock. That's somebody that hates you, that you love, that's coming to you and doing something that's seemingly very out of character given the circumstances around them. I love Joel's just very raw reaction of just like, yeah, hey, like, I'm not expecting this. I need to tread lightly because I don't want to ruin a conversation that you came here to have with me, because I desperately need to have a conversation with you because I miss you so much.
Yeah, there's like this light tone of hopefulness in his voice. Even just that one, hey, it's like he's caught off guard, but he's also kind of like, is it happening? Are we gonna talk? Are we gonna fix this? Are we gonna figure it out? So, and then they sort of do. It's great.
Yeah, they have a preamble about coffee just
Yeah.
to sort of keep it casual because they don't know how they're going to start the conversation.
Solid icebreaker.
Yeah, exactly.
Preamble about coffee, new band name, I call it.
But jumping into the serious stuff, Ellie starts off aggressively here with, I had Seth under control. Asserting that it's like, I don't want you papa bearing me, right? Like, we established this dynamic and you're still trying to be that, and I didn't want that. And he just rolls over and he says, yeah, I know, because because he wants her to get what she wants, and he just couldn't help himself. And then she realizes, she sees his body language. He's he's lowering his head, he's being compliant, and she like sees, okay, I'm getting what I want, then I'm going to continue. And you need to stop harassing Jesse about my patrols. And as she's doing this, she stands upright and she's asserting dominance. So her body language is starting to take control. She's like, oh, I like what I'm getting here, and I like this feeling. But then Joel takes an immediate turn on the conversation after he realizes that Ellie is taking a step back. He says, okay, Dina, is she your girlfriend? Like, so this is the first thing that's on Joel's mind. As soon as he gets an opening to ask a question, after he realizes that Ellie has asked all the questions that or has said all the immediate things that are on her mind, he has to say the first thing that's immediately on his mind. And the first thing that's immediately on his mind is Dina her girlfriend? So this was nagging at him. He wants to know the nature of the relationship because he wants to understand more about Ellie that he didn't understand. He didn't know that she was homosexual, and this is important because he wants to know Ellie and he wants to care about her, and this is arguably the most important thing about her that he didn't know.
Yeah, I like this moment because you kind of, there's this ebb and flow, this back and forth of like trying to get what they want out of the conversation. Ellie comes in and getting what she wants. And then when Joel has a turn, he wants to get to know this part of Ellie. He wants to talk to her again and be a part of her life again. And so I think that rather than just jumping on the like, hey, let's patch things up kind of a thing, he tries to kind of slip in a more innocuous way to kind of like, maybe we can just talk about some things together. And this is a thing, like maybe let's talk about this, rather than just trying to bring the hammer down and say, can you please just forgive me already? Or, which is of course not what he would say, but do you know what I mean? Like he's just trying to kind of like slip in there and grease the wheels a little bit.
Yeah, I love this turn, and I love Ellie's body language here because this really breaks down Ellie's kind of attack dog body language. She then turns to look out from the porch, the same as Joel is, and it just becomes a more natural conversation, one that they could have had in the first game. Really feels like something is being repaired here.
Yeah, and then note the language that she uses here. No, she, that was just one kiss. It didn't mean anything. I don't know why she did that. So she's deflecting a lot, and she's putting everything that happened at the dance on Dina. So arguably, with how she is wording this, she can exculpate herself. She is trying to disguise what happened at the dance as maybe I'm not homosexual. What happened was because Dina is bisexual and she made advances. A it is a word puzzle way of getting out of it if she thinks she can, because it is still something that is she's not like, obviously it's basically too late, but that is her natural instinct is still to hide it from Joel, even though it's too late. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because everyone here and myself up until like the last few times I played this, we didn't realize that Joel didn't know that she was homosexual, and that is the reason for like how this whole last scene plays out, and we're going to keep talking about why that matters. But I'm trying to get at like how the language, it clarifies that that is what he's thinking, and that is why she's acting the way she's acting.
Yeah. Well, and I like what comes right after that is Joel just kind of cuts through that, where he's like, he it uses clearer language to get something out of Ellie rather than saying like, is she your girlfriend? And then Ellie deflects and he goes, okay, but you do like her. Like another question to kind of like another probe to be like, you have to answer this one. You can't just.
When I think it's important, that question kind of has a sense of, I don't really care. Like I still love you as a daughter. This part of your life is not a deal breaker for me, because is that your girlfriend? It could still go either way. But this, and the way, in the tone he says it, do you like her, just really is, no, I'm still gonna support you. I still love you like a daughter. You don't have to hide this from me.
Well, and so he says as much right after. Yeah.
He doesn't say it's but you do like her. It's not, but does Dina like you? Right? Because like up into like we know from context of earlier in the game, he always was pushing Ellie towards Jesse and always thought that they would be better together. Because he didn't know that this was how she really felt.
Just whoosh over Joel's head.
Right over, right? Yeah.
Just like Joel, his gaydar is broken. I can sympathize with that. My gaydar is completely malfunctioned. So me and Joel are the same in that way.
Right.
Joel and Eric are basically the same person.
Yeah, 100%. Indistinguishable.
But now with this question, there's no escaping it. You do like her. There's no answer to this where she can get out of it, where he will find out the answer of her orientation that will finally lay this to rest, and he will know her better the way that he wants to know her better, because she is so important to her. And this embarrasses her, and she looks away and she sighs, and she's like, this is it. This is the moment. But she responds with, this deflection of like, I'm so stupid, right? And she's thinking, I'm so stupid, because she, in a moment of being vulnerable with Dina and liking her so much, she accidentally slipped up where she, she's like, she had a relationship with some other girl the last few years, but she kept that secret from Joel. She's kept a secret before, but she feels stupid because she accidentally did it publicly, and now Joel knows, and now everybody knows.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much I'm so stupid now that Joel knows. I think it's I'm so stupid because of the repercussions that this has on the Jackson community, i.e. Seth, Mr. Bigot Sandwich, and
and Jesse and his family.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think it's twofold, right? Because like it was the publicly, it was. Well, and it's also, I do think it's important that she didn't want publicly for people to know. She didn't want Joel to know. I also think it was important to her that she wasn't super interested in getting in relationships, because she was still upset about the Salt Lake thing and wanting her life to have meaning outside of relationships. She wanted her life to have meaning, sacrificing her life to save people type thing. And so she's upset that she accidentally traded that to be vulnerable for a relationship, and so she feels stupid for that too. And so anyway, so Joel cuts through that and he says, look, I have no idea what that girl's intentions are, but, and he struggles for a second, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you. And I love that subtle pause that he does there, because you know how he was friends with Bill, but like it's not like they ever addressed that relationship up until you watched the television show. But you don't know how he would really be towards Ellie and her orientation, being homosexual. Like, but that subtle pause of like, which way is he going to go with this? And then for him to respond with, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you. And for the phrasing of it to be correct, right? Like, it's not anything in the sense of like, I own you, so I give you permission, or I approve of this. It's just, she's lucky. And it's still a neutral stance of like, I still have no say in this, but you're a good person and she should go for it. Or if she's going for it, she would be very lucky. And like the phrasing is as short as Joel can make it, because he's Joel, but it's like worded in the way that he can as a father, but in a respective, neutral way. It's just like, it's perfect for Joel. I love that.
I feel like I would have handled that as well, just because like I can get really awkward and I don't know what to say. So I probably would have been like, good luck with that. And it wouldn't come across as nice and accepting. It would just be like, okay, I don't know how you feel about this situation. So I just think that, yes, like the way that they perfectly worded it, because they don't have a great relationship, so it's hard for them to talk to each other. And dads always have a hard time talking to their daughters. I'm sorry. My dad's so awkward. But, you know, it's such a dad way of saying, I accept you and I still love you, and he's still trying to connect with her in such it is an awkward way of doing it, but it's loving and accepting versus the way I would have done it.
So I just watched the episode of Friends where it's nothing of note happened, but like, so in Friends, Ross is divorced because his ex-wife is now a lesbian, and so he's like meeting up with
I
his.
wish I were a lesbian.
Yeah. so he's
Chandler in the first episode.
Yeah, he's like meeting with his mom and dad. Ross is meeting his mom and dad, and his mom goes, "Oh, where's Ben, Ross's son?" And he goes, "Oh, he's at Carol's house." Just like casually mentions his ex-wife who is a lesbian in passing, and then without saying hello, Ross's dad goes, "You know, a woman in my office is a lesbian," and I just like. It's just the perfect like dad line. Yep. And so when thinking about how Joel handles this situation and how Ross's dad handles, it's just night and day. And I love Ross's dad in that show. He's my favorite character. He cracks me up every time. You know, someone in my office is a lesbian, and then he just sits there and looks at Ross like he expects him to have an answer to that. Yeah. It's hilarious.
All right, so here's the turn, right? You're such an asshole. How does Joel's response elicit, you're such an asshole?
So I don't take it as an angry, you're such an asshole. I take it as almost, I don't want to say a term of endearment, but there's
really this... But based on her follow-up response, you don't think she's angry? I was supposed to die in that hospital?
Like, I don't. I mean... I'm gonna stick to it. I think it's
my life would have fucking mattered.
Yeah.
All right, keep going with what you're saying.
Oh no, it's all right. I'm not gonna argue with you, Shan, because I don't want a pretentious prick just to beat me down over and over and over again.
All right, go on. I'll let you make your argument.
Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I fall kind of somewhere in the middle. I think that Ellie is she kind of heard the. One of the reasons she's coming into this conversation is I think that she wants to confront Joel about some things. And then she comes up and Joel is just being like Mr. Nice. He's like, I accept everything and it's okay. Like, whatever you do is fine. And she's just like, you're such an asshole. Just talk, like, just fight with me. Talk with, like, I don't want to, like, I don't want you to just tiptoe and be nice. Like, I was supposed to die in that hospital. Let's talk about that.
That's my exact argument.
Yeah.
Is okay. That right there. Yeah. And yeah. Way to go, Eric. Thanks.
I did it. I'm smarter than Tucker.
That was much more eloquently than I was going to go for.
So she is, so clearly him talking about Dina, is she your girlfriend? She's mad that he took her on a tangent when this is the real reason she came here, was to quarrel, as Nate would say it on The Office.
My mom and I are quarreling.
I can't keep out of her stuff.
Making me choke on my water.
But I do think there's a lot of depth here, right? She's also mad because, like, she's saying you're an asshole to him giving respect and love to her, to the acknowledgement that she's a lesbian, and still wanting to love and respect her as her father figure. And that makes her mad. And she says, you're an asshole. And it's like, it's hard for me to articulate how I feel like this fits, but Joel saved her in Salt Lake because he was her father, and he understood that she still meant more to, like, the trade-off was saving everybody with a cure, potentially, and the trade-off of having a life of meaning. And she had that epiphany at the dance 1 hour ago. And it was when Dina kissed her. And this is him pushing her to admit it, to realize that he was right, that he saved her life for the right reason. And even though, like, you know, it's a little bit different than he maybe realized, it's not what, like, Jessie, it's not that she's straight, it's that she's a lesbian, right? Like, it's a little bit different, but he was right. She has meaning, and the trade-off was correct, that he saved her life for the right reason, and it's bigger and it's more meaningful than saving humanity. It's that she can be loved. That pisses her off because she was supposed to die at that hospital, and that would have given her meaning, not love with Dina. And so that's why she blows up at that moment. That's the inflection point. You're still wrong. I was supposed to die. That's why I think this is the turn, and that's why she says that at that moment.
Yeah, I just love all of the subtext in this conversation, and I think that Ellie is so fixated on her life up to the point in Salt Lake. So she's 14, the first 14 years of her life, and then it would have ended there, and then those 14 years would have had meaning. Her life up till that point would have had meaning. And what Joel is trying to get her to do is to focus on the years after that, 14 and onwards, that those years have meaning too. And so they're of these different mindsets, and this is where they're kind of butting those mindsets together, where Ellie is like, those first 14 years needed to matter, and they would have mattered by me dying in that hospital. And Joel says, no, the rest of your life matters too, which is why I took you out of that hospital. Yeah. And that's really, it's another example of Naughty Dog. It's like, that's the actual conversation they're having, but they're talking about something else on the surface, until Ellie kind of blows up and says, I was supposed to die. And now they're really talking about what they're talking about.
Yeah. And Joel gets out the beginning of a sentence, and he says, like, you know, she starts talking, and he's like, I'm not trying to, and ellipses off. I do think the follow-up here implies Joel thinks her response means she thinks he's trying to overcompensate to get her back or something. Like, if I'm wording that correctly,
he's trying to play nice so that she'll be in his life, and that Ellie thinks that that's what Joel is doing, when really Joel is just saying, like, no, I just want you in my life, and it's okay. Like, I accept that.
I think he's trying to justify his actions here of just like, or not his actions, but the conversation and their whole relationship and all the baggage there. It's saying, yeah, I'm trying my best here. And then I love how Ellie just cuts that off.
Yeah, so Joel like feels like, all I'm trying to say is like him saying I'm not trying to is that he feels like he thinks that Ellie thinks of Joel as a manipulator, as a sort of like, you think that I would try to manipulate you to get you back? That's not what I'm doing. I genuinely love you and I genuinely respect you, and that's what I'm trying to say. I sincerely love you for who you are. Like, those I'm not trying to is just 4 words that is like him demonstrating like, no, I'm serious. I love you. It's subtle and it gets cut off, but it's like, I wanted to point that out, that it's like, that actually means something, even though it's not much. All right. But yeah, as we said, I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered, but you took that from me. But then he gets circumspect and he says, if somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment.
Stop! Who thought it? I thought it was going to go, I would have changed. I want to take a straw poll here.
You think he would have done something different?
No. I wholeheartedly believe that Joel has always wanted to do this and would stick to his guns. Joel's done lying to Ellie.
Oh, I thought he was going to say, if I was able to do this again, I would have chose differently given the whole past that they've had afterwards.
You think you would have said, I would have
let you die?
I mean, like, or at least would have been sorry about it, or would have tried to do things differently. Because usually when people say, hey, if I got a second chance at this, I would do things differently. And yet it doesn't really track from the beginning of the video game. This is the first thing
that he could have done differently is tell her the truth. He still would have saved her.
Well, I think I get what you're saying, Tucker, that like it. So I feel like Joel has done lying to Ellie, and I feel like Joel doesn't regret what he's done. But the way that they set this dialogue up, they get the player to think that like he's going to say something different. Like, it's like, if I could do it all again, I would do it differently, because that's a pretty common trope. Exactly. We hear that a lot.
Yeah.
But then he starts that thing. He says, if the Lord gave me another chance, I would do it all over again. And then it's my favorite line in the game, because Ellie has been fighting and pushing back and saying, my life doesn't have meaning. And this is another example of Joel saying something, but then actually saying something else. Is he's saying, your life does have meaning. Your life after that juncture in your life at Salt Lake, after that has meaning. I would have done it all again because your life after that point has meaning.
Yeah,
and that's what he's trying to get her to realize. Yeah, to you, to Dina, to Joel, to so many people, but especially to Ellie.
I think it's just so powerful because he's saying, I would put myself through this strained relationship and this uncomfortableness all over again for your life. And there's just so much more power behind that, knowing that, you know, Ellie has really hated Joel for years now.
Mm-hmm. I think it's only been 1 year since Salt Lake.
At this point?
At this moment?
Yeah.
No, it's been been like 3 years.
No, I think she's 19.
No, since they went back to Salt Lake.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know the timeline. I thought she was. That sounds about right. Maybe a year or two.
Okay.
Year and a half. Something like I'm not sure.
I thought that's what you were talking about. But...
Yeah, it's been a while since Ellie found out. I'll just say, has had time to really hate Joel.
Yeah. All right. So he says, I would do it all over again. I love her body language here because, you know, it's not focusing on Joel now, even though he's gone a little more alpha. He's standing up. This is the first time he's been a dominant figure in this conversation. But I love her acting here. Ellie appears shocked, but then also it seems like, am I remembering this right? It seems like she also kind of nods, and and to me, her body language and her face seems to kind of admit that she agrees with him.
It's like this level of understanding almost, where it's like she's I think shocked is the right word, where she's kind of shocked by like what Joel said.
I
He
think
just
she's
like
shocked
stood
by
up and
that.
said that straight to her.
I think she's shocked that she agrees with him too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, but then there's this little like slight, super subtle body language, this glint in her eyes that's like, maybe my life does matter, even though it didn't get to matter in the way that I thought I wanted it to.
Because take that body language and then let's play out this last sentence. Yeah, I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. And Joel appears devastated, but I'd like to try. So that first part of the sentence sounds like it's I don't think I can because I don't like you. But when you take the second part of the sentence and you go back to the first part of the sentence, it's not that I don't think I can because of what happened. It's more like I don't think I can because I don't know that I have it inside of me, but I really want to. And so if you take these last, like you take those two sentences and then you just have to keep working backwards and you go back to her shock. Then it appears like, is she shocked that she agrees with him? Because now she would like to try to forgive him. So when he says, I would do it all over again, and she's like, oh, I would like to try to forgive you, it's because maybe she agrees with him, like maybe my life has meaning and I'm okay with him having saved me. Like maybe he was right taking me out of that hospital. Like it's weird, right? Because like you play this out linearly, it does one thing. You take the conclusion of how she feels by the end, and then you jump all around the conversation and you try to feel like, okay, well, if that's how she feels at the end, then that's how she felt the whole time. Then what does that really mean that she was saying when she said that other sentence? What does that mean when she was really making that look? And like it changes a little bit of everything when you work your way backwards. That was word soup, but I think I made the point.
I'll have to do a podcast on that monologue to dissect it, what Shan was saying.
That was very delicious word soup. Thank you, Shan.
Yeah. You're welcome. Is that somewhat correct?
I think that I like the way that Ellie, again, her acting, because it does kind of make you understand the previous conversation, not the previous conversation, but the previous events in this conversation better, and like kind of where she's coming from. And then right after that, Joel just goes, I'd like that. And he starts to kind of choke up a little bit. Like he's like, it happened. She's starting to let me, she's not there yet, but she's like, she left a crack in the door. Mm-hmm. And that's all he's wanted for, ever since Ellie found out.
Well, to me, this whole conversation in context is Ellie comes here to Joel, wants to hash things out at some level, doesn't really know how it's going to play out. We get to the actual meat of the conversation. In the back of her mind, part of her wants to forgive Joel. The other part is this huge unforgivable barrier of he made my life not matter. And then Joel says, if I had a second chance, I would do it all over again. He's giving Ellie the explanation. In subcontextually on, I did it on purpose. This wasn't an accident. This is my point of view of why I did it. And she starts to see that. She comes to that conversation like, oh, I actually understand a little bit more now. And that understanding allows her just to take that one step over this unforgivable obstacle to then say, okay, I do want to try to forgive you because we do have this whole relationship that is still important to me, and I can maybe finally get over this big rock that's been in our path for at least a year.
Yeah. I like her honesty in saying, I don't know that I can ever forgive you. And it's just like, I mean, you figure 4 years of like not knowing what happened in Salt Lake, and then a year of finding out the truth. And then it's only been an hour since, she saw Joel stick up for her and realizing maybe I want him back. She like that's like it's not just like a Deus Ex Machina of like, oh, I forgive him now because he's a good person. No, it's just like I have 4 years of hating him, or at least not trusting him, and then a year of kind of hating him, Like, I have all of that behind me. I know myself. I literally don't know if I can do it. But I remember him mattering. I remember our relationship and the good times, and maybe we can get more of that. And I want to try because I felt something again and I want him back. So I want to try. And just like even just like Joel's last word of "yep" and the way he swallows it, just everything Troy Baker does, it's like I'm just gonna drool over it because like I don't know, I'm a fanboy that way, but it's just like it chokes me up. He's just like so full of big dad energy, of caring about his girl so much.
Well, and I think it's
care that much.
Yeah, well, it's just the perfect cap to this conversation because they kind of build up to this talking about other things. They have this juncture where they talk about what they're actually talking about, and they kind of get to the bottom of things. Ellie says, I like, they kind of like, okay, well, let's try to work through this. Joel says, I'd like that. And then now both of their goals are accomplished. Ellie came and had it out with Joel. Joel is starting to have Ellie back in his life again. And now that those two goals are accomplished, Ellie goes, okay, well, I'll see you around. And then Joel just goes, yep. And like, he kind of swallowed like this not heartbroken, this like, he just can't contain his emotions almost, where but he doesn't want to seem overly eager. So he just, yep. And then she walks away. And as a player watching that, that that's the last conversation that they have. And the whole time that you're playing the game, you think, that maybe
you don't know they had that conversation.
Yeah, you don't know they had that conversation. And so it seems like maybe Joel and Ellie kind of had their last conversation was not a pleasant one, or they left it on a bad note. But you realize that no, they just barely started. It's bittersweet because they did have a nice conversation, but it's also Ellie was finally ready to forgive Joel and say, okay, let's work on this. And then he dies literally the next day. Not dies, he gets brutally murdered in front of her the next day. Mm-hmm. And it just recontextualizes all of the trauma, all of Ellie's actions, and her just complete need to go after Abby, because she was finally ready to have him back in her life, and that got taken from her by Abby.
That's exactly right. And she's taking out on Abby. But like, again, like at the fight with Abby, that's when she realized, I'm not mad at Abby, I'm mad at myself, and that's why she stops.
So being a girl myself, I would like to add in that I have been in not the exact same situation trying to avenge my father figure in my life who was brutally murdered, but sometimes being a girl, you have complicated emotions, and I think just kind of being in similar situations where you get so worked up, your emotions are so heightened about how you feel about somebody, like, oh, they've wronged me, and you can't help but to just kind of overthink it, mull it over for a long time. So she sat on these emotions for, like we said, 1 to 2 years, and I'm sure she had this whole speech that she played out over and over again, and she knew how she wanted that to go. And when it actually came to the moment, sometimes when you have distance from somebody, you think you know how you feel, But I often find myself, when I actually go and talk to that person, my emotions change. It's, you're in the moment with that person and you realize, oh, I need to calm down, or this, maybe I don't hate them, because being in actual proximity to someone, it makes it a lot easier for me to forgive them and just be like, well, it actually wasn't that big of a deal. And so I feel like that's what happened here, was that Ellie played this out for so long. She thought she knew how she wanted it to go, and she probably wanted to make sure that what she said to him really stung him, like really, stabbed at his heart, and she wanted to have that final say. But when it came to it, he was kind of this wounded puppy, and he's obviously been trying for years to connect with her and to fix things. And she goes, I really don't want to forgive you, but I'd like to try. And she is trying to mend that, and she probably didn't have that intention going into it. So anyways, just a little context there. But I really love this whole conversation, because the whole game, your heart is just crushed. It is broken. You want your revenge. You're just devastated for Ellie and for everything that she's been through in both games. And you think, leading up to the very end of this game, that she never got closure. And so this is a very bittersweet moment for me, when they actually get to talk it out and you realize that she did have that final conversation and they did mend their relationship, even just a little bit. And so you're crushed, you're heartbroken, but there is a bit of sweetness to it of, okay, but they had some closure. Obviously, that was still very hard for her, but it was something. And this is what makes this game, the whole thing, but especially the ending, very, very cathartic for me. I don't know what it was. I just watched my niece play this game a couple weeks ago. She beat the game. I've seen the ending so many times, but that particular night I had pulled an all-nighter. I was awake for over 24 hours. I did not feel good. I had been working like crazy, and I was just like laying in bed watching her play this game, and we got to the ending, and I must have had some pent-up emotions or something, because I was just bawling my eyes out, tears streaming down my face at this point. And I'm like, oh, I just can't handle this. So I don't know. I love this game. It clearly brings out a lot of emotions for me. It's something that I love playing anytime I need to release emotions. So there you go.
Yeah. I think story-wise, poetically, for Joel's forgiveness to have meaning or for it to work, it has to be connected to the reason that she wasn't able to forgive him up until this point. So the reason their relationship is broken is because he, took her purpose and her meaning from her in Salt Lake, and then he lied to her. So ultimately, it's she wasn't able to be sacrificed for a cure, so her meaning is gone. So for her to then find a way to forgive him, it has to be, he has to do something that is connected to her finding meaning again. I believe, personally, I don't know. Like I think as a writer, I mean, I'm not a writer, but I think for the writing to have a good arc, for it to have meaning, it and for the apology to be satisfying, then she would have to connect it to her losing meaning. And so him intervening at the moment that she kisses Dina, and that she finds meaning again, and for it to be the moment that her identity as a lesbian is made known, and for that to be him accepting her, I do think that is why that is the moment that she chooses to want to forgive him, is because it is connected to her finding meaning again. It is a sort of, if he can still love me for that when I always thought that he wouldn't, maybe I can try to do the same for him. I can try to love him again. It just brings it all right back around. And that's why I think identity is such an important core theme of this game. It's not because it's we see identity as a motif throughout the entire game. It's Lev as with his trans identity, and we see the communities of the wolves, and we see in Seattle all of the monuments to like communities, and we see all the notes of like the Seraphites and the wolves, and like why people are leaving communities and joining other communities. Identity is like they are constantly harping on this idea of like identity mattering, and it's because it all like redounds to like the central thesis of like acceptance, and why Ellie ultimately decides she wants Joel back. And so it is just the thesis of the entire game of why she and Joel come back together. And so they decide to sprinkle it into the entire game. That's why it's everywhere in the game. It's not just like a woke game where they decided to shove it in everybody's faces. It has purpose. It was very intentional, and they wanted to elevate the theme of the entire game by making it purposeful. I think it's beautifully written because of that.
I mean, we have to remember the title of this game is The Last of Us, and what does us mean? That is, I feel like the whole game is about our identities and our relationships and what makes us us.
Yeah. It shows the perspective, it shows the stakes of like acceptance and rejection, and like, you know, especially like when you're at the end of the world and all you have left is like your little community. Like if she lost Joel, it's, and she's already lost Dina, I guess at this point, like she'd have nothing. She has nothing at the end now, but like the stakes are so high because acceptance and rejection is paramount.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that was one of the big questions I had towards the end of this is she loses everything towards the end of the game. And so she has this flashback to this moment with Joel, and then it goes back to her at the farm, and she puts the guitar down and just kind of walks away, and then the camera pans up from that room and back out onto their little wheat field, and you see her walking away. And my first thought is, where is she going? She, like, who does she have to go to? Could she be going back to Jackson? Like, would people still want her in Jackson? Dina might be in Jackson. Would she want to be there where Dina is? Like, where's Ellie going? I want to know where she's going. Who does she have left? She's got hardly anything left.
She's going back to the quarantine zone in Massachusetts.
Yeah, probably. Just going to trek all the way across, going back to Boston, where it all started.
Shipping up to Boston. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I was thinking about this, right? Like, this encounter happens between Ellie and Joel, and just like few hours after this, Joel saves Abby with Tommy. I'm curious if you think this conversation that Joel just had with Ellie recontextualizes anything with like, because again, like there are a lot of hurt b-holes on the internet who think, I know that Joel drove past those people in the opening sequence of The Last of Us Part 1, and that's why I know this is the worst written game ever made, right?
Well, and we all know that people never change or grow, so yeah.
Yeah, we can't have any character development here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've already like talked about how like Joel would absolutely have saved Abby because of like the Sam and Henry. Like he was mad at Henry for having abandoned him, but then once he said, but like I had Sam, you would have done the same. It's like, oh yeah, if I have a kid, that's priority. I'm saving the kid. But otherwise you save people. So actually he would have saved Abby because you save people. But also I'm thinking he just got the potential of Ellie back, and I don't know that he's necessarily a reformed man, but he's thinking, I don't want to lose more moments of a fatherhood, and I'm seeing this young woman out there, and she's somebody's daughter, ironically. I've got to get her back to her father.
That is ironic, yes.
But like, there's a paternal instinct of like, I have to go protect her, and especially coming off the heels of that last conversation with Ellie, it's like there's so much goodness in him at this time of like, I have to be earnest and I have to help and be a good person because I want to be the good person that deserves having Ellie around. There's no evil inside of his heart at this moment, right after that conversation, that thinks, oh, look, there's a person out there being chased by a horde of clickers. I should just walk away. Nobody in their state of mind after having just talked to Ellie and her deciding to try to forgive him is thinking, I'm just going to walk away from that person. That person. Yep. Like, what are these like stupid like incels on the internet thinking? He would not have done that in that situation.
No,
it's just
they
another
still
argument
want him to
for
be
that
previous Joel. It's that wish fulfillment they picture themselves, and they want it to be what they want. But character development does exist, whether or not we see it completely happening. But there's a lot to suggest that there's a lot of character development. Well, there was a lot we see in the first game, but there's a lot in between that is heavily implied, and it's pretty obvious when you look for it. It's like I think I mentioned on a previous one. It was after Joel dies and she goes back to the house, and you can see the entire community has just littered the whole front porch with flowers and notes, and he's obviously so loved in this community, and it's been years. So there's a lot of character development implied. And if you just like pay attention, then you would see it. We're allowed character development, and you don't have to have it so readily spelled out for you.
Stale characters are boring.
They are.
Just so you know. And it's just like no story in video game history has come under such scrutiny. And it's just like every time you go onto a Reddit post, it's just like, well, this story is bad because I would have told it slightly differently. It's like, I don't see you talking this way about Call of Duty. Like,
well, no one expects a story from Call of Duty.
But like, it not being a story not being told the way that you want it is not the same thing as a story being bad. And
we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I used the example. I used to work with someone, and she didn't like the Beatles. She was like, yeah, it's just bad music. And I was like, now hang on, stop for a second. You can say that you don't like the Beatles, but it is not bad music. It reinvented what music could be from that point and forever after that. So it's okay. You cannot like The Last of Us, and you can say that you don't like the writing, but you can't say that it's bad writing. It is incredibly thoughtful, purposeful, and meaningful writing if you let it be. It's okay if you don't like it, but you can't say that it's bad because it's just not.
Yeah.
It's the same
I went to the Barbie movie and I was like, oh, this is a perfect 10 out of 10 for somebody else. And it was like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 for me because I was a man. Like, it is just not for you, possibly because it is a genre piece. That's fine too.
I thought it was a 6 or 7 out of 10. When I finally saw it, I was like, this is what everyone is just blown away by. I thought it was just okay.
It has to, like, it was an art piece for somebody at that time. Like it depends on who you are at the time and if it spoke to you at that time. That's what art is. And that's what this game was for me at that time. It was a 10 out of 10 for me at the time that I played it. And it still is every year that I play it.
Yeah, that was the year that Shan came out as a as a lesbian.
Flaming straight man.
I'm coming out as hetero.
I'm coming out as hetero.
It's from the
All right,
Office.
sorry, Tucker. I'm sorry we interrupted you.
Oh no, I was saying, yeah, like I think you hit the nail on the head. Like this is art. This is video game art, which is something that we don't get very often in the modern era of games. You know, where we
not in AAA games.
Yeah, AAA games where it's, you know, you have your Call of Duty. It's the same game. You got FIFA. It's the same game year after year after year. And there's not a lot of substance to it. It's entertainment. Like there's video games for entertainment, and there's video games on the art side of things. And I think The Last of Us falls on that side of it. The Last of Us Part 1 did both, you know, which we've talked about before. And The Last of Us Part 2 leans a little bit more on the artsy side, which is where I think a lot of the hate comes from. It's wrong hate. They're dumb. They need to start taking stupid pills.
You are wrong.
And appreciate art for what it is. And it's, you know, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the Beatles, but I can appreciate, you know.
You're not a fan of the Beatles?
No, I'm not.
You guys are crazy.
And that's fine. It's insane, but that's fine.
I completely understand. I understand it's great music. It revolutionized the entire industry. I understand it. It's just not my jam. I'm not thrown on Yellow Submarine.
But
okay, no one's
like the argument's insane to me. It's like
hey, whoa.
Like the argument's insane to me. Like I was just reading like a Reddit post the other day about The Last of Us Part 2, and to me it's like looking at the Mona Lisa and be like, I don't think this is perfect because I would have put eyebrows on it. It's like, bitch, what is this argument? Like, because you would have done it differently doesn't mean that it's not great.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't like the Mona Lisa, and that's fine. The argument that we're making here,
it's not bad.
The argument that we're making here is that The Last of Us is the Mona Lisa, and if you just don't like fine art, then I guess you don't like it, and that's fine.
Yeah, art is subjective, except when it comes to The Last of Us and apparently the Beatles, when it becomes objective.
Yeah.
I feel like going back to the Beatles, I feel like Yellow Submarine is like our version of What Does the Fox Say? Or a song like that. Like
do not trash
Friday.
What Does the Fox Say?
Sorry, I'm just saying like it's a silly song and it was hyped up at the time that it came out, but it's not something you would casually listen to. It's just like
I casually listen to it all the
this.
time.
I would say, I would argue Gangnam Style was that for us, and Gangnam Style still slaps.
Yeah,
it does still slap.
I hate that I like that song.
Party
I kind of like that song.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, unless I don't love the original Beatles version of the Beatles songs. I really love Across the Universe, a fantastic musical. I love their version, and I really love the movie Yesterday. You need to watch that movie.
We need to start talking about. Yesterday is fantastic. I love that movie, but we need to start talking about something else, or I'm gonna get upset. Like, I love the movie.
Are you triggered?
I'm getting
Zelda
triggered
is the
over
worst
here,
video
you
game
guys.
franchise ever.
How dare you?
Man,
That one
all
stings.
right. Well,
No, it's not true.
all right.
Eric is personally offended and triggered, and we need to move on before he just flips the table of this podcast and never comes back.
At some point, I'm going to try to flip the table.
Yeah.
Do we have any
Need to bolt
bonus
down the
topics we
pieces.
want to talk about? Like, how did this game change you?
Oh,
Because I've played this like 5 times now.
Can I make one other point here on the ending of this game?
Yeah.
It hit me as we were discussing in this podcast, so this is not a fully formed idea, but it adds to the cyclical nature, the cyclical theme that The Last of Us games have, is this conversation between Ellie and Joel. If you replace Joel with Ellie and Ellie with Dina, you could almost have the exact same conversation. Ellie becomes Joel in her relationship with Dina. She makes a selfish decision and goes after that and betrays Dina's trust, and Dina can have all the same reasons to hate Ellie. And if I'd love to see, I could easily see this playing out in a third game with go ahead, Eric.
I was just agreeing with you. Sorry, I thought you were done. I think that there's elements of that. I think that there's a lot of subtextual things that are different, right?
Oh, yeah, obviously. Yeah.
I don't think that Joel really made a selfish choice. It was selfish to a degree, but he was also doing it to protect Ellie. But I think that there's lots of truth in that where, you know, there is some elements of role reversal where Ellie was kind of like Joel to Dina to a degree. So I can see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And also Ellie just lays waste to an entire city of people, like Joel lays waste.
Like nothing. Unless you're Shan, and then you just leave. Yeah.
Okay, but Abby does
so
too. When
alive.
Oh yeah, totally.
When Abby goes through the island, she just slaughters everybody and she becomes Joel. She takes on that role to protect a child. So I'm just saying, like, Abby's kind of a hypocrite here too. Oh, you left most of them alive?
Yeah.
I kill everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to kill every single body before I move on to the next area.
I'm a leave no witnesses kind of gamer. You know, I think it's
no
technically still.
If you're sneaky enough.
I was going to say it still counts as stealth if there's no one left to talk about it.
Well, if Joel had gotten Abby in the first game, no witnesses, then yeah, he would have been fine.
Yeah.
The logic tracks.
Yeah, that's sound logic.
All right, anything else?
No, that was the last point I wanted to make.
I was going to say I did like the point that you were trying to bring up about how this game has changed you. Yeah. Shan, when you were asking that. I think that like it just changed my perspective and idea of the kinds of stories that you can tell in video games. Because a lot of games that you play, you know, you're the hero, there's something evil, you go and you stop the evil, and those are nice cathartic experiences. I love The Legend of Zelda, and basically every Zelda game is just there's evil and you are good, go beat the evil and solve some puzzles along the way. And I really love that kind of storytelling too. I think it can have its place, but the Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 challenged my ideas of what storytelling in video games could be, particularly The Last of Us Part 2. It tells a story in a way that can't be done in another form of media. It makes you connect with the player. It makes you participate in actions that you might not want to participate in. And it makes the player engage in the story and be a part of the story, even when you don't agree with the characters or don't like what's happening in the story, because it hurts your heart to watch these characters that you love go through these things or do things that you don't want them to do. But the game makes you engage in that. And it forces you to see things from multiple perspectives, which I haven't experienced to that same degree in another game before, where it makes you play the game as, you know, from one viewpoint, and then it flips the script and it says, okay, now play as who you think the villain is. And then it makes you sympathize and see things from their point of view too. And that's the way that it does that is just something I don't think that you can do in another form of media. And so it just really, it changed the way, what video games can be for me. It raised the bar.
Yeah, when you think about it, video games, they're all basically the same thing. It's sports, it's kind of like adventure. You always have to like kill things or, you know, battle things, and puzzles or puzzles. There's really nothing else. You're always going to be fighting, right? Or puzzles. So I really love how they have added storytelling into modern video games. And I really love how this enhanced storytelling in video games. It's still a shooter. You're still fighting other people. There's a bit of puzzling along the way, trying to, you know, sometimes you're stuck in an area and you're like, I don't understand how I'm supposed to get past this. But yeah, they really, really enhance that storytelling. And I would hope that a lot of other games moving forward have that element really amped up as well.
Yeah, I love this level of, kind of to your point, Eric, there's this almost ambiguity around who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And it makes you really think twice about things. You understanding different perspectives changes how you see the world. That's just a fact of life, and very rarely do we get that in the real world. And I think it's amazing that Naughty Dog was able to do that with The Last of Us, especially Part 2, where it's when you see different perspectives, your understanding of the entire world completely changes.
This came out around, what was it, COVID?
Hang on. 2020. It was like June 2020. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it was COVID.
So,
all right, so this came out around COVID, and it was a time of escalating polarization, as everybody is very familiar with in America. And this, and like everybody, unless you're very disengaged and fortunate to be so, you're pretty much pushed pretty far in one direction or the other. And this game dislodged me because after playing it, it made me realize that I was in echo chambers and I was not considering that, considering people empathetically, that they had their own, like, it made me realize that everybody has good faith beliefs and that they are all good, they're all motivated and believe that they are good people, and they are all thinking that they're doing good things and have good faith belief systems. And so once I played this game and I adopted this new perspective, I could then empathize and think, well, that person thinks completely opposite of me, and just, I'm gonna say this person's on the opposite belief set of me politically, and I think, well, it used to be that I think, well, they're on the opposite side of me politically, I'm gonna compartmentalize and think I dislike them and I don't want to talk to them now. After playing this game, I now think that person arrived to their conclusion not because they're ignorant, not because they are poor, like because they hate people, not because they are trying to hurt people. It is because they think that that is trying to help people, because they think that that is a good thing, right? So it forced me to think of the world completely differently, that they are thinking of the world the exact same way as I am. They want the world to be as good as I want it to be, but they looked at it from a completely different angle, and they picked up a whole different set of ideas along the way, and they arrived at a different conclusion because they're in their own echo chambers. And so this game forced me to realize that everybody is me, and we're all good people that are just consuming different information, and we're all good people. And once I realized that, I started to like people again. That's
I think
really
Shan's
weird.
a prick now. You should have known him
Yeah.
before
Ooh,
2020.
he was so much worse. Love you, Shan.
I grew up with Shan, and I can confirm, yes, he was mean. You were so mean. You bullied me.
Well, yeah, I was, but
As a
that's not
kid,
even
as
the
a
point
kid.
that I'm trying
You've
to make.
gotten better
But it's like,
over years. Right.
I'm very, that's not even the point I'm trying to make. It's like I'm very highly, like, because I work from home and because I like consume a lot of podcasts and stuff, like I'm very highly informed on the stuff that I'm interested in, and so like I know when people are wrong about things because I consume like a large spectrum of information, not just like one set of information from, like, I try to consume the same thing from multiple sources, so I feel like I have a good sense of like of disentangling truth and lies, at least better than most people that get it from one source or stuff like that. And so like I get really annoyed by people that are in echo chambers that are being lied to, and like so I would just like, I get so annoyed and I get so mad at people, and I'd get really hateful and resentful. And that was like pre this game. Then I played this game and I started to like people again, because I realized that they're all good people that are just getting to conclusions that are not my own, but they are still really good people. Anyway, that's what this game did for me. It unlocked my ability to like people again, because I came to the conclusion that Abby is amazing. And it took me a couple playthroughs to get all the way there, but Abby is a good person. She just like wasn't who I liked at first, and she just is complicated and was the exact same person as Ellie. She just wasn't the person I knew first, and I just had to play her perspective a couple times to understand it and empathize with her.
This is the part, Shan, where you say, you remember feelings, right?
Right. I have feelings every day.
Shan played The Last of Us, and all
I
of
think
his
I'm starting to
feelings
have
came
feelings
back.
again. You remember feelings, right? Yeah, I remember Are you telling me you don't have feelings?
But it also, like, because of that, it also eventually helped dislodge me from my, like, I was going far in one spectrum, and it forced me to dislodge, and now it's like I'm pretty aggressively moderate. It's like I've adopted both sides of the spectrum because I realized I was in echo chambers, and it's like, so it's like it's been really healthy for me, this whole, like, realizing that I needed to empathize with other people and realize that they are also have good faith arguments for what they believe. It's like, it's just been really healthy for me to, like, put myself in other people's perspectives because of this game.
It tells a meaningful story that can have meaningful effects on your life. And it's just excellent storytelling. And it's a game that, like, well, if you let it, it can change how you look at the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's just good stuff.
Also, okay, so very important to this game, central to it, is Ellie losing meaning and then finding it again. We've all been there. I've seen all of you lose meaning at one point and get super depressed.
Nah. I've never been depressed once in my life.
Much.
I don't know what you're talking about, Shan.
Oh.
You've all been in therapy. Well, not all of you have been in therapy.
Tucker and I are both in deep
I need
denial.
therapy.
Yeah. We've never been sad. What's depression? Yeah.
But, okay, I'm talking about this because I know our audience is primarily men. It's I assume most by our age are married, but I know that there's, like, an aimless male epidemic right now. And if you like games, maybe that describes some of our audience. So I thought maybe this would be an interesting topic. Be vulnerable, talk about ways that you've been aimless and lost meaning and how you have found it again.
I got pretty lucky. Like, when we were all roommates in college, I realized that I hated college, and I was taking generals. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And the thing that kind of tipped the scale for me was I was taking a career exploration class. And we did, like, an aptitude test to see, like, what kind of skills do you have? What would you be good at? And I took the aptitude test and overwhelmingly got the result that said, oh, you should be a high school teacher. And I was like, okay, well, clearly this test doesn't work. Because I have hated teenagers ever since I was a teenager. I don't hate teenagers, but, like, it was like, you should be a high school teacher. It's like, I can't stand being around teenagers. And I was like, I would hate that. And so I was like, this doesn't work. School's not for me. I'm not learning anything. I'm not growing at all. I'm just kind of spinning my wheels, and I'm crazy depressed all the time. And so I dropped out of college. I just stopped going. I was like, I'm going to be done with that. And
that's also after you lost a girlfriend and you gained 60 pounds.
Yeah,
wow, way to kick him while he's down.
Thank you for including that, Shan.
Let's be honest.
He's on the up and up.
I did gain some weight, but I was also freakishly skinny for a long time. So, but I had just gotten dumped a couple of times by this girl I had been seeing for about a year and a half. And I just was not in a good place, and I would just kind of sit and do nothing, and I'd go to work, and I was a useless person.
Worked at Jamba Juice for almost 15 years.
I worked at Jamba Juice for a super long time, and I worked at Jamba. I started when I was like 17, and then I worked there the whole way through college, and then
you took a few breaks working at a loan collection.
That's true.
Agency.
I quit for about 6 months. I worked at a debt collection agency where I had to berate and pester people to pay back money that we had given them as payday loans, and it was a very scummy job and did absolutely nothing for my mental health. It made it so much worse. Until one day I was like, I am a bad person for working here. I need to leave, and I went back to Jamba. So I just spinning my wheels, doing nothing with my life, feeling very empty. And then the woman who is now my wife, Liz, called me up one day and was like, hey, Steve, who was the owner of a bunch of Jamba Juices back by, like, closer to where my parents lived, He's like, Steve needs a general manager for one of the stores. It was actually the store that I used to work at in high school. She's like, he needs a general manager for that. I gave him your name, so he'll be calling you. And I was like, oh, I don't think I can do that. That sounds really hard. And
That's responsibilities.
and I had a very low opinion of myself at the time. Yeah, well, everyone had a low opinion of me at the time. Yeah, Shan especially, and Tucker, they both had very low opinions of me. No, but so, and then I took the job. I got hired on the spot, and I did that for a little while. And because I moved back, I started spending more time with Liz, who was a good friend, and then we got married not long after that. And then we moved across the country to North Carolina, which I love. I love it here. I've lived in plenty of places in my life, and I feel like I was moving all over the place to finally find my home. North Carolina is my home. And so I married my best friend, and we moved across the country to a place that I love. And then we had 2 beautiful girls. And all of a sudden, this aimlessness in my life, these holes that I had, because I had a good friend who was looking out for me, and then decided that we should get married. And I said, yep, that's a great idea. And my life, and I had meaning again. I had a family to take care of. I had, a wife to love. I had kids to play with, and it gave my life meaning again. And then again, later, I started to be sort of discontented with my job at Jamba. I was struggling, and I'm not really an extrovert, and it was hard for me to deal with customers and teenagers all the time. And so I wanted to have a change, and Shan and Tucker both helped pull me out of that. And they, helped me to find suggestions to completely change my career from, running a restaurant to doing UX and UI design. And so they helped me kind of flip that around. And now I find fulfillment in the stuff that I do for work as well. And so it's just, I got lucky by surrounding myself with good people who care about me. And I feel like I'm just good at taking other people's good advice, Liz was like, hey, we should date. And I said, that's a great idea. And Shannon Tucker.
Like on the 10th try. She tried for so many years.
And then Shannon Tucker said, hey, you should be a UX designer. I was like, that's a great idea. And so I think that's one of my skills is I'm good at recognizing good ideas when I hear them. So
for like the 10th time.
The first time. Yeah. First try. You don't have to badger me about it at all. So that's a very long-winded story, but just,
it's okay. We'll trim it.
Yeah, we'll trim the fat, all the parts that weren't interesting. Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Well, it's just if we go too long.
Yeah.
All right. Tucker.
Oh, yeah. So I've had a few points in my life feeling aimless.
You mean up until yesterday?
Up until
yesterday.
Did you get a job?
Tucker got a job. Yay.
That's so
He's no longer the saddest of the dads.
Yay. Now he's just the same level as sad as the rest of us.
Just normal sad now. No, so actually this happened, I don't know, a few years ago, where life was just felt like I was getting beaten down, like had a toxic relationship with life. And it was like pretty serious of like, why am I putting up with life? Like I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with, what I'm doing, but it's just like, why am I trying so hard to do something and succeed in life? And that's not happening. And just life is pushing me down over and over and really lost meaning of just like, why do I even want to try anymore? It was pretty dark. One of the darkest periods of my life. Went to therapy, started talking it through, and read a book. And I'm not a big reader. I think I've probably read maybe 10 books in my entire life. And
3 of them were Dr. Seuss. So.
Yeah, exactly. 3 of them were Cat But I read Man's Search for Happiness or Man's Search for Meaning. I think it's Man's Search for Meaning, Man's Search for Happiness, something like that.
Man Inside Me.
The Man Inside Me.
By his favorite book.
Yeah. By Tobias Funke. No, this is a book that is by a Holocaust survivor, where he was in Birkenau and then Auschwitz, and just he talks about how he had this fight to survive. He could have given up over and over and over again. And that book, after I read it, I'm like, that wasn't helpful, and kind of just threw it to the side. And then thinking on it more and more, I started to find meaning in really little things. I didn't have this big epiphany of like, oh, my calling in life is X. It was more so like, oh, hey, I like golf. Maybe I should try to get better at golfing, and worked on that. And then it was, hey, I like this. Let's try to get better at this, or let's explore this. So I found some little tiny meanings in hobbies that I enjoyed. And that's what really kind of helped me bring out. But it was really small steps. And video games kind of became, story-driven video games became part of those hobbies as well, where I could start to see other points of view, really appreciate different art. And then now, have a family, have, our first baby. She's almost 9 months old now. And that is, another really big meaning in life of fatherhood.
She's adorable, by the way.
Yeah,
it's an important detail that you left out.
It's very squishy.
But yeah, I mean, it's like there's not. I learned that there doesn't have to be this big calling in life to find meaning in life. There's always something you can be working towards. Always something you can be trying to become something different. And as long as there's something like that, no matter how big and small, it really helps fight off those dark times.
Well, lots of little things can equal one big thing, right?
Yeah.
Find meaning in lots of little things, or even just one little thing. And then the next day you find meaning in two little things. Just try to find one extra thing every day that's meaningful. That's great. I love that.
Yeah. Well, Emerlie, did you want to talk about anything?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the original question was. You guys are just
Have
telling
you lost
these beautiful
meaning and
stories.
found it again?
Oh, yes.
Tell us about your depression.
Don't be too long.
Are you feeling bummed out?
Yeah.
No, I would just say,
Really,
like,
you ignorant slut.
have you ever questioned the teachings of the Mormon Church while under the influence of alcohol?
Where did you get this
It's a website. Doesn't matter.
No, basically, like, yeah, just the gist of it is I've had a lot of health problems in my life, and it's not stuff I can't really control. And that has really put a bummer on things. I grew up with really bad health problems. I barely graduated high school because of it, but I wasn't motivated back then. I was very lazy. I slept a lot, which I didn't realize was chronic fatigue at the time. And I was just bouncing through life and through a series of events and kind of pushing myself out there. I opened up my personality and started living life. Like I moved to Canada on a whim, and while I was married, and just went and lived in Canada and went to a cake design college. And from there, it really just opened my life. And I started really pursuing cake decorating, which is what I'm working on right now, but I'm in my kitchen. But yeah, I started really finding a lot of meaning and purpose behind being an artist and working with cake and sugar and all that. And it's something I'm crazy passionate about, and it's consumed my life. And yeah, I got health problems again. I was a COVID long hauler, and it gave me parosmia. I had a distorted sense of smell and taste. I dropped 25 pounds, and I became severely malnourished to the point I had to stop working. And I'm still fighting my way back. I did fix that problem, but it's still dealing with the repercussions of that, even though that was now over 2 years ago that I was healed from that. But basically, with all that being said, I had to find meaning in other things, and I had to kind of get through this very depressive period of my life where I just didn't know if I would ever be healed. I didn't know if I would ever feel good again, and I was blacking out in the shower. Like I couldn't. I had to stop doing my wedding cake business because I couldn't hold wedding cakes anymore. I almost collapsed under several wedding cakes, and I couldn't function, and I had brain fog, and I was so lethargic. But basically, with all of that, like I found meaning in other things and got through that. It helped. kind of helped. I lost some weight from the pandemic. I was like, well, at least I'm losing my pandemic weight, but I became too skinny and couldn't function. So I was like, well, that's one thing I have going for me. But also video games. Thanks to Shan. Shan is healing the world, one of us at a time.
One game at a time.
One game at a time. And it doesn't, I think until you like truly play video games and you're in that position, you might not understand that. A lot of people think video games are a waste of time, but at that time it was kind of a resurgence of my life of playing video games again. I grew up loving them, but I stopped allowing myself to play them when I became obsessed with my business. And for a while there, I couldn't do anything else. I was in bed a lot. And so Shan gave me a PS4 and I started playing The Last of Us and Uncharted and like all these other games, and they helped me feel like I was accomplishing something in my life. And so these games have a lot of meaning for me, because even though I couldn't actually do anything in my life, it was like every time I would play a game, it had this very, I don't know how to explain it. Like it made me feel like I was accomplishing something. I would play a game just from start to finish and I was like, oh, I completed something. And it made me feel good about myself, even though it was just a game. But it was at least something to get me through that period of my life. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I said this on an episode, Eric's Indie thing, but I have a list on my phone of all of the games that I've beaten, so that I can get those little micro accomplishments. Every time I beat a game, I get to put it on the list and I go, oh yeah, another, it just,
Eric's
sweet dopamine hit. Yeah.
It's Eric's beat off list.
Okay, well, that's gross.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta put another on my beat off list. It's very satisfying.
Yes.
It's a long list.
Happy ending.
Yeah. Add to it every day. Yeah. Sometimes multiple times if you have enough time. Well, Liz is fine with it. All right, so for me, I've bottomed out once, and it was in college. And although I'm going to bring up names, it was my fault. But Eric and Tucker were there.
Oh. Shan loves to blame me.
All right. So I went when I was in college. I had an internship for it was for XML templating, and really it was just copying and pasting. And somebody had said something to me at the time that said, oh, this is a good internship for computer programming if you were interested in that. And I had never considered it, but then I realized, oh, I hate people, and this would put me on a computer. And that changed my life. That one sentence, it was the first day of the internship. And so I started looking into it, and I was really, really bad at it. So I started looking into computer programming, transferred to USU because I hated the U. And, but like after doing the U for a year, it's like, then I got like, they had never taught me C++, so I got put into C++, and I was really, really bad at it. So I started failing all my classes, and then, and that's when Eric started getting depressed, and he didn't want to go to classes because he was bad at his classes. And he is like,
I wasn't bad at my classes. I was lazy at my classes. Let's call it what it was. Like,
so one day he's like, well, what if I stop going to classes? And I was like, well, I hate my classes and I'm bad at C++. So what if I also stop going, because I'm bad at calculus and I hate doing it and I hate doing C++. So I'll also stop going to classes. Straight Fs for one semester. You can't really recover from straight Fs, can you?
I feel like I need to just jump in really quick and advocate for myself. This wasn't an idea that I articulated to Shan like something that he should also do. I just did it, and then he was like, that looks like fun. So I didn't like make him do it. I just feel like I need to advocate for myself a little bit.
Well, okay, so that happened, and then like later, Tucker decided he wanted to go into psychology, and I was like, oh, I got like a 4 on my AP test in psychology, maybe I'll go into that. Then my grades skyrocketed to like straight A's, and it's like, well, okay, maybe I'll do that, even though there's no career for me in psychology. I'll figure that out later.
Yeah.
To be
But at
fair,
least I get to go to
I,
classes with a friend.
I chose psychology as a major because it was the quickest path for graduation, given the classes I had already taken, and I just brought Shan along with me.
Path of least resistance. Yeah.
But that's like when my life started bothering me out. It's like, okay, I'm bad at my classes. I have no direction. I'm going to be in college forever. I don't know what my career is going to be, even though I'm spending all this money, and all my friends are going to graduate without me, and I'm going to be stuck in this limbo because I have no counselors directing me, and I don't know what my skills are, and I don't want to work at a minimum wage job. And then at some point, like, once people started moving on, because Eric didn't want to finish college and our first friend graduated, and then Tucker at one point decided, maybe I don't want to go to religion anymore. And I was like, well, that sounds like fun too, so maybe I won't go to religion anymore.
Shan's just a follower is what I'm getting out of this story.
Well, I don't have great examples in my life, and
he hitched his wagon to the wrong cart.
The wrong horses here.
Oh, the wrong horse. Wow.
So it's just like all these guardrails that were just like on my life because they're natural, because they're on your life from the beginning, all started coming off, and nobody's there to put it back on when you're in college by yourself, and your friends start taking off without you, and it's like, uh-oh, what am I gonna do? Luckily, I happened to meet a woman. And you can't marry a woman if you don't have a career. I'm sorry, that scares the hell out of me. So I decided maybe I should graduate, and maybe that means that I should put some guardrails back on my life. Maybe that means I should go back to religion. Maybe that means that I should get my grades to a point where I can graduate. Turns out with psychology, you have to have a minor as well. So I had to go back to C++, and I had to have a friend help me graduate. Turns out I was like one letter grade away from not graduating college, or at least having to go another semester to get my grade average up because of that straight F semester. Okay. Thank you very much, Eric.
It's not my fault.
I had to pay to get one of my grade letters expunged to be able to pull my letters up, my grade average up to a passable level. But anyway,
college.
Then after graduating in psychology, I found out that you can go to a code camp, and I found out I can do coding if it is in visual front-end coding and not in C++ nonsense languages that I can't see. I'm a visual coder. And suddenly my pay went from 60 to 200,000 within like 8 years. So, I'm doing fine now.
Brag.
So brag.
I get the trickle down, so you know what, Shan, pop off, queen.
So I went from dislodged to lodged, and it's just because I found a woman and I like impressing people, and she relodged my life. And so I have a neurological need to impress people, and I discovered that about myself. And
that explains a lot.
Yeah. And also, the reason that I have never become dislodged again is because I have found with my ADHD that I also find a lot of meaning in my life from constantly pursuing like education through like podcasts and stuff. And so since I'm always at home and I'm always working that way, I am always on YouTube, passively consuming information, and I'm always like passively growing on a day-to-day basis. And so like I never feel like I'm losing growth, and so that gives me meaning in my life. And then another ancillary part of my meaning in my life is giving. That has given me more meaning than almost anything. And so I'm constantly trying to find ways to help lift other people up, and trying to find ways to do it altruistically, such that I I'm always trying to find out, like, how do I sever all the variables such that I'm not getting anything in return and I'm not trying to take anything back, and nobody else is finding out about this stuff, so that it is as altruistic as it can be, and it can just be for my own internal benefit and for that person to actually be helped. And that has provided me with meaning year over year, and it is something that I have been lucky to have only because of the position that I have been in because of my career. And so as soon as somebody is in a position of a great salary or whatever, if you want meaning in your life, that is the prioritize building wealth and stabilization. And then as soon as you have that under your feet, start giving immediately and helping lift other people up with you, because your like meaning just explodes in your life and you will feel edified. I've never felt like I've lost meaning in my life. I'm always feeling great. You're doing fine too. You could be doing it. You could be doing it too, Tucker. You dick.
I agree with that. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten is if you're feeling really down, don't worry about yourself and try to do something nice for someone else every day. And it's like, and that will always make you feel better about yourself. So if you're struggling with depression, even if it's something little, like just try to find something nice to do for someone else that day, and it'll help. It always does.
So I have a question, Shan. That was very beautiful, I just have to say first. And I definitely agree, although I've not been in that position necessarily. I definitely
But when you are, I told
position.
I've told Emerlie,
you have to do
no
it.
Choice. You do it or I'm gonna whip you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we just had this conversation. We were texting each other. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm gonna do when I have money. He's like, you give it away, and I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I was already planning on it,
right.
but thank you. But it's I can definitely say Shan has been very generous, a shocking amount of generous, and that's been great for me. Helped me get through a whole interesting period of my life, but. Kind of a follow-up question. At one point years ago, because we're very competitive siblings, and we're the two youngest of the family of 5 kids. And one time I asked you, Shan, or I told you, you are the winning sibling. Like, you're winning in life because, you're making money and you have a child.
And they're all failing.
Everyone else, my family really struggles. Like, it's hard being a person with ADHD. It's really hard being in a family of people with ADHD because everyone is all over the place. But yeah, everyone's struggling. And it was like, oh, Shan, you're winning in life because you have everything. They are Delulu. But your response was, no, you're winning because you're following your passion. So I just want to know, follow up years later, I know you're not necessarily passionate about computer programming, but you're amazing at it and you make good money. But where is your stance on that currently? Of just like following your own passions? Because I know you have other ideas of what you want to do eventually.
Follow the money.
Yeah. There's always money in the banana stand.
Did I ever say something different?
Yeah. Follow the money. That's the only... And that's it for the episode today. Takeaways are follow the money. That's the only thing that matters. Yeah.
No, Shan and I have had this discussion quite a bit. Of like, the dream is we just make enough money at a job to be able to satisfy our hobbies, to do the things we actually really want to do. And I'm not passionate about my career path necessarily, but it's something that I can do, and it pays the bills and pays to allow me to do the fun things I want to do and the things I am passionate about.
I love my career. I think if I ever said otherwise, I feel like I've changed my mind. I get to not talk to people all the time.
It's the best.
And
it's my favorite thing.
And people like praise me for like doing so little because they don't know how easy it is sometimes. And then I just like get to squander stupid amounts of money on like collectibles. And then people just like roll their eyes on like money that could have sustained them for like 5 months. I'm just like spending on stupid shit like that gives me joy. That's what life's all about.
Oh,
It's
you're
buying dumb
starving?
stuff
Look at
while
my
other
Legos.
people-
Yeah, exactly. That's what
There's been
life's
times
all
where Shan's like,
about.
"Oh, I just made this much money this week," and I'm like, "Wow, that's more than I made last year."
Yeah,
Like no,
that's-
like
that's
legit.
true.
There's been times where he's made more money in like a week or a month than I made in an entire year. It's been a rough couple
Yes.
years for me. And it's been a very generous couple years for you. But it's just like it's shocking sometimes. But like I love it. I love hearing about it. I'm like, that's really great. Where's the trickle down?
You get the
Money,
trickle down.
please.
Yeah.
I get the trickle down, but
economics
like, wow.
works in Shan's
Shan,
family.
that's really great. Do I get a PS5 out of this?
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I think we've made 10 people listen to us all the way from part 1 to part 2, the end. Thank you, 10 people.
You did it. Thank you, 10 people.
Did it.
Yeah.
5 of them
You're-
are our significant others.
You're our favorite 10 people. Yeah.
You are amazing.
All of them are us.
You are superstars. But thank you for listening, and we are going to try to figure out what comes next. It's probably going to be Zelda, and then it's just going to be chaos after that.
Open to recommendations. Like, comment, subscribe. Give us recommendations in the comments.
And then we'll throw it out the window, and then we'll just do whatever we
We'll
feel
promptly ignore them.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but yeah, give us if you do have a recommendation, let us know. We'd love to hear it. We won't jump on it right away because we air these a little while after we actually record them. But let us know, and maybe we'll get to it. Tell us what your favorite game is. Maybe we'll play it.
All right, so like, comment, subscribe.
Especially if it's an indie game.
You can follow us. Yeah.
I've probably
You
already played
can
it.
follow us on YouTube. Please also listen to Eric's Indie Corners. We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It turns out we actually have some listeners and followers there. I didn't know that.
Shout
I
out
just
to
logged
Spotify
on
peeps.
today. Yeah,
Hi,
I didn't know that
Spotify
people could
peeps.
find us. You guys are amazing. It might be the same people that just listen.
We love you. You're our other 10 favorite people.
Or bots. It could be bots scraping us for data, so it could be just like AI.
That's fine
poor
too. We
data.
love them.
That's
Yeah.
fine too. We still
Want the listens.
cruise
It's
some
okay.
hours.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Outro. Bleepity doof, bleepity bloopity blow.